I think we're ready to start. So welcome to the American Library Association's Office for Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services and the American Library Association's Social Responsibility Roundtable's fourth afternoon of social justice. My name is Derek Wilmott. I am the Acquisitions and Collection Management Librarian at the University of Toledo and co-chair of the Social Responsibilities Roundtable Programming Committee. As you come in, please note that your microphones will be muted. As with other presentations, use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to ask questions, to which I will ask our panelists to respond. A recording of today's sessions will be made available at the Social Responsibility Roundtable website. Thank you. So now I have the honor of introducing the first session. What can U.S. librarians learn from feminist struggles against imperialist invasion in Ukraine, military wars in Sudan, and religious fundamentalism in Iran? Feminists are actively engaged in the current struggles against Russia's imperialist invasion of Ukraine, the war between military factions in Sudan, and religious fundamentalist rule in Iran. What are the unique features of the struggles of women in these countries? What can librarians everywhere, especially those of us in the United States, learn from them as we face growing authoritarianism, racism, misogyny, and homophobia in the United States? How can librarians and feminists in these countries help with each other's struggles? Our panelists today are Dr. Tetiana Granchak, head of the Department of Political Analysis at Vernadsky National Library of Ukraine and a member of the board of the Ukrainian Library Association; Israa Abbas, poet, researcher, and cataloger, archivist, and founder of the Sudanese Poetics Archive and the Sudanese Literature Archive; Frieda Afary, Iranian-American public librarian, translator, and author of the book Socialist Feminism, A New Approach, and a member of the Social Responsibility Roundtable. She's also a producer of the blog Iranian Progressives in Translation. And now with that, I will turn this over to our esteemed panelists, beginning with Dr. Granchak.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Derek, for this introduction. And I will share my presentation. I hope you can see it now. So, dear colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to take part in such amazing event and important. I highly appreciate this meeting as a platform for the perspective of mutual support and cooperation. I admire the resilience of women of Sudan and Iran and the commitment to key democratic values of American colleagues, and I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to tell more about Ukraine's reality. My topic is Women Cut Their Braids. I'm going to emphasize the efforts of Libraries of Ukraine and the Ukrainian Library Association, both before the war and during the war, through various activities to help women in Ukraine feel more secure and confident. To start with, I'd like to emphasize that a woman in independent Ukraine used to feel free and empowered. We had neither nationalism, nor authoritarianism, nor racial discrimination. We carried out educational work regarding LGBT people. We could run a business, participate in politics, study, be engaged in science and creativity, create or not create families, give birth to children, or be child-free. We used to choose our own lifestyle. We were protected by our state and society. In our families, there is a traditional partnership of a man and a woman. We had choice and freedom right before the beginning of the Russian full-scale aggression. Along with this, I'd like to remind that the issue of gender equality is one of Sustainable Development Goals adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. At the national level, it is supposed to realize such tasks as create conditions for the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women and girls, to reduce the level of gender-based and domestic violence, to encourage joint responsibility for managing the household and raising children, to ensure equal opportunities in the political and social life, expand the population access to family planning service, and reduce the teenage birth rate. expand the economic opportunities for women. A landmark for libraries in terms of promoting the implementation of the UN Agenda until 2013 can be considered the article by Valentina Pashkova, former president of the Ukrainian Library Association and coordinator of the American Centers of the US Embassy in Ukraine, and an international trainer of IFLA. The article outlines the directions of libraries' efforts to promote gender equality, creation of a safe and friendly place to meet and socialize, implementation of programs and services to meet the needs of women and girls, particularly regarding their rights and health, providing access to information and communication technologies that help women learn business skills. The implementation of gender-oriented library initiatives could be tentatively divided into the following areas: gender equality, measures to combat violence and discrimination against women, women's leadership and business, women and girls in science, social digital inclusion and media literacy, libraries as partners and platforms. And I'm going to give you only some examples of the work that was provided by our libraries on gender issue. For instance, implemented with the support of the Odessa National Scientific Library Cultural and Educational Project Gender Studies was aimed at support of Ukraine's obligation to ensure gender equality through the dissemination of objective information about the ideas of gender equality in society, overcoming stereotypes and countering fakes, forming gender awareness and culture of broad sections of society. The gender-oriented project Let Girls Learn, supported by the American Council for International Scientific Research and Exchange, IREX, was implemented by the Information and Resource Center Window to America of the Kropivnitsky Regional Universal Scientific Library. This project was aimed at providing informational support to female students of cities' vocational schools on combating human trafficking, reproductive health issues, and increasing self-esteem. As a part of the project of gender equality and overcoming gender stereotypes, the all-age family reading library number 2, DIM, home, of Pavlograd City Library System opened a book studio for free communication between equals. A book studio was focused on educational activities, conversations, discussions, and information materials. Group classes with training elements aimed at successful formation of gender identity were conducted, and there were organized interaction with medical and educational institutions, conducted joint events for girls and boys. Regarding support of women's leadership and business, in 2019, in the City Library of Melitopol, a new social project for women, professional development workshop was started. The events were implemented as part of the professional integration of internally displaced people project in 4 cities of Zaporizhia region: Zaporizhia, Melitopol, Berdyansk, and Tokmak. Training for women took place in the following direction: basic of internet marketing, online sales, 9 weeks of training, and accounting, 18 weeks, which were supplemented by soft skills training of a practicing psychologist. The target audience is women with disabilities, internally displaced women, women with children under the age of 7, single mothers, and mothers of large families. An eloquent example of the role and opportunities of women in Ukraine is a signing of the Memorandum of Cooperation between the Ukrainian Library Association and the Minister of Digital Transformation, thanks to which many our libraries have become digital education hubs and help women to overcome digital divide. And this picture is extremely symbolic two strong, independent women. Left side, you can see Victoria Onan, a Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation for European Integration, and right side, the President of the Ukrainian Library Association, Oksana Brui. The situation changed dramatically after the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine. The Ukrainians suffered a powerful blow from Russia. Nowadays, our people are facing destruction and heavy losses. Our families and people's lives are being destroyed, and we need support and protection more than ever. We are alive, and we are looking for places where we would be safe. We are looking for shelter, a point of support that would help us not to get lost in this mess and not to lose ourselves. The daily routine of our women has changed radically. Life shifted to bomb shelters. Self-defense, survival without water, light, and heat became vital skills. Today, Russia cancels all the right of Ukrainian women, the right to be a woman, to have a home, a family, children, profession, and even just to live. On the slide, you can see well-known and not so well-known victims of Russian shelling. Among them is the award-winning Ukrainian novelist, essayist, and poet Victoria Amelina, who died as a result of Russian shelling of Kramatorsk on June 27, 2023. She left behind a 10-year-old son. Before her death, Victoria Amelina had spent more than a year documenting Russian atrocities in Ukraine. She worked on a book, War and Justice Diary, looking at women looking at war. You can also see a photo of the wounded Irina Dmitrieva, who lost her 4-year-old daughter Lisa during a Russian missile attack on Vinnytsia in the summer of 2022. Lisa had Down syndrome, and her mother's Instagram accounts filled with pictures of the girl's life, which she began posting soon after her only child was born. In her first interview after Lisa had died, Irina said in desperation, "The world is watching us get killed." Another terrible side of the war is sexual crimes as an instrument of torture and punishment of the nation, and the manifestation or spread of military culture, ideas and beliefs that make violence the norm. First of all, it is hypermasculinity as a basis of military identity. Madeleine Morris, an expert in international humanitarian law at Duke Law School, explained that in military culture, sex is understood as the exploitation of a woman by a man, aggression and dominance. A woman in discourse of hypermasculinity is a focus of qualities that are considered as manifestation of weakness and second-rateness. And therefore, women are perceived as flawed and inferior people. In a situation where masculinity is constructed as non-femininity, one of the strongest insults for a man is behaving like a woman. Women personally actually are those others through dominance over whom the man or soldier assaults his masculinity. In war, raping subhuman woman who also belongs to state of the enemy becomes not only permissible, but also a mandatory practice. The pain and despair of Ukrainian women can be felt in a series of artworks by Victoria Naumova, who depicted Ukrainian cities in the images of women. There is despair, suffering, mercy, and willingness to defend one's own in spite of everything. Today, Russia is committing genocide in Ukraine. However, this is a danger not only for Ukrainians, because it is about the fact that in the 21st century, Russia has questioned key humanistic values, the value of human life, freedom, the right to be oneself, gender equality. Today, Russia is testing the strengths of the world and becoming a landmark and hope for different authoritarian regimes. And if it is not stopped, the violation of rights will become the norm, the new normality in which everyone will have to live. Ukrainian women do not accept the status of helpless victims in these circumstances. Instead, they want to have agency. During the war, Ukrainian women are taking a leadership role. They have learned to live under constant threat, to understand weapons, tactical medicine, and electric generators. They protect the future even at the front line. According to the data of Ukrainian Ministry of Defense Alexei Reznikov, more than 5,000 women are now at the front line. On the slide, you can see both those who died defending Ukraine and those who are still alive and now protecting the country from Russian invaders. Our women are also active volunteers and support the activities of volunteer centers, many of which were organized in our libraries. Together with volunteer organizations, librarians, their readers, the residents of communities collect and make clothes and products for refugees and for the front. In this way, a community of practice is being built, which forms a sense of unity that is important, first of all, for new members of communities who left their homes to escape the war. Along with wearing camouflage nets, our women create social nets in real library space. Cooperating with state authorities, charity foundations, different state structures, for example, employment centers, psychological, social, and legal services, libraries help displaced women find temporary housing, find work, get information about their rights and ways to use them, renew social ties, get access to the internet and computer equipment to continue studying and work, attend language courses, improve and acquire IT skills, receive psychological help and support in processing a traumatic experience. In conclusion, if we declare our commitment to the ideas of equality, we should not stand by and wait for Russia to form a military alliance and destroy all that we value so much. We must put efforts to consolidate people in different countries, put pressures on governments to end any cooperation with Russia, and secure our own future by standing side by side with Ukrainians. On behalf of the Ukrainian Library Association, the librarians of Ukraine, and myself personally, I thank you once again for your concern and support. Glory to Ukraine. God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Granchak. We'll turn it over now to Israa Abbas.
Hello, everyone. My name is Israa Abbas, and thank you for being here, and also thank you for the roundtable to inviting me here, and I really appreciate giving me this time to speak about this. I'm the founder of the Sudanese Poetics Archives and the Sudanese Literature Archive. And so I'm here to speak about what the U.S. librarians can learn from the feminist struggles against imperialist invasion in Ukraine, military wars in Sudan, and religious fundamentals in Iran. So I thought just to give like a little bit of a background understanding of feminism and and certain viewpoints regarding feminism itself. And feminism may be viewed for some people like something the total opposite of like hatred toward men, or when in reality is more of everyone of any gender, race, or any forms of identities. And anyone could be a feminist, not just towards women, of course. And also it's a way to advocate for a basic mindset of equality for everyone all over the world. And one of the examples, such as like for like equal pay for everyone that regarding of what specific job they're doing, and also bring awareness of mental health and health in general for everyone alike. And so this is more focused with gender inequalities, but more with the racial, social, economics, and sexual and cultural factors. And some context regarding feminism, the white feminism that has been tainted over the years of the history, more focused with regarding people of color, and so it's being retaught and rewritten regarding how it started, how it is currently in modern day. And so white feminism more tend for performative at times due to its narrow focus only specifically regarding gender, but in spectrum reality is more just in the general of a whole thing of the race and socioeconomic and sexual and cultural factors. And also it's a way to we need to allow the indigenous and local people and women who are to be in charge of their own stories and to not be changed for better of other people to there. And so these are the regarding in Sudan, the exact locations regarding of the attacks that have been happening during for the military war in Sudan, and which has started in April 15 of this year. And this is just some information facts regarding how many people have been displaced by the war, and also how many people have fled Sudan for safety, and specifically either in Egypt or the surrounding countries, and also abroad. And just to give like a background, some information regarding that Sudan, not every single state in there is affected by it. So mainly like the capital in Khartoum, and then Omdurman, and then the violence spread throughout the region of Darfur, and then also in Port Sudan and so on. And the other areas are not affected by that. So just to some people have fled from where they were, such as like in Khartoum, to other areas of safety regarding that. And during this time, the schools are closed throughout Sudan since Sudan's Ministry of Higher Education has been burned down. So that's another reason why many people have fled Sudan, so they could continue their education elsewhere. And I'd like to read a quote by a Sudanese protester that reads, "We are facing another revolution, this time for the equality of women, whose rights should not be upheld because she is your mother or daughter, but because she is a human being." So this is like very important to be said during protesting and elsewhere, such as the phrase where look at her as your mother or your daughter, but at the end of the day, it's a human being, and so regardless of who the person identify as, and they're human beings, and to be treated respectfully. And so this is one of the phrases that they can't during the protesting in Sudan. And I would like to share some Sudanese feminists throughout history in the past, and some modern as well. this one, her name is Fatima Ahmed Ibrahim, and she, since the 1940s, so she played a really large role, specifically advocating to be in a woman working as in the politics with alongside with other mainly men at the time. And so she advocated for women's rights, and especially when it comes to career goals and education. And so she spoke up on equality, specifically not like to be like a copy of men or others, more of for them to be able to have the right to be at the same level regarding with a career. The next Sudanese feminist is Niamat Ahmadi. So she's actually a current modern activist, and she came from the North Darfur. So she's a native of North Darfur and has witnessed a lot of violence that has happened throughout Darfur, and so she has been advocating for the rights of people who had been displaced, and especially during the war, the conflicts that has been happening there over there. And so she eventually extended her career and through her education, obtaining her bachelor degree in psychology and a master's in sustainable development, which has helped a lot with the foundation that she has, the organization that she has founded called the Darfur Women Action Group, which is a very important organization for Darfurian women and Sudanese women in general to be able to speak up about their rights, their human rights, and to be able to have the freedom to be able to have their career or to have a space where they could be themselves throughout. And you could also check out on social media, it has played a very big role throughout this conflicts, where it helped to reach out and to get more people to become more aware of what's truly going on in Darfur and the surrounding areas in Sudan. So since the 1940s, Sudanese women activists, they wore a traditional white clothing called a tobe, which as you can see here is in the photo. And this is traditionally known as a symbol symbolizing working women, specifically women in the office or any professional work. And so whenever, still to this day, there are women protesters who they wear the white tobe representing women in advancing on their careers and their goals in life and through education. And so this is like a reminder from the past and till this day of how women are growing in the field in different careers. And also the color white is where similar color as also the type of material used for the cotton, which is mostly the major export is Sudan. So this is very important to represent women, Sudanese women in the professional fields. And also there are throughout like the healthcare, politics, arts, and etc. Of different advocates through there, such as Sudanese doctors advocating for better healthcare for Sudanese civilians, especially women and children as well. And so some cases where a doctor, such as an OBGYN doctor, a male doctor who they've been punished for providing better healthcare for pregnant women and providing better proper birth experience. And so that's that set like it was like alarming time and a very intense time there when the cases like this happen, and where doctors are taking their time to help out these people in general, or women and children, and they're being punished for doing what's right, which is not seen as something that's good. And so many doctors have been in the front lines throughout the war currently, where they have been taken away to help out the soldiers instead of the actual civilians. And so in cases like that, where these doctors are in the front lines for these cases. And also, there has been a lot of advocating for people who are disabled, civilians, and they to be protected and to be safe during the war. And many musicians and artists and writers, they use their creative ideas, their works to express like human rights and to bring awareness of their fight for freedom of expression and speech and their human rights. And so this has also gained a lot of popularity throughout, where even with the use of social media and connection, and where to bring out how they feel and put it into what they could express through there. And also over the years, such as what I mentioned about women in professional fields, where they have gained to be able to have certain careers that were used to be known for only men, or the other way around, for men to have careers where only women could have. And so they could now have more equal opportunity to use their skills and talents throughout. And so just a little trigger warning for some people. I'm gonna mention some like gender-based violence and towards women specifically, and others. So in Sudan, there's the FGM, which is it's violence towards girls, and mostly young girls, and over time civilians in Sudan. Is spoken up against the wrongdoing of FGM, which is more of a, in communities that practice FGM, is mainly viewed as a way of purity or social acceptance, and specifically having better marriage prospects and better sexual attraction for male partners is what is being viewed as in certain cultures, and where women and men and children are advocating to have the laws change regarding this, since it's affecting and hurting girls and women as well. So as you see here in the UNICEF Sudan, they have the data collected that 86.6% of women in Sudan have undergone FGM. And over time, they have noticed that it's getting gradually less, which is a good thing, where the more people are advocating about this, the less of girls being affected by this. And so this is a good example of how the more the Sudanese women and girls, and they have spoken up against this, and of changing the laws, and to be able to have the data to go down less over the years. It shows the progress happening from there. These are some examples of protests that has been happening in Sudan, South Sudan, and where sexual violence towards against women, and the rape culture, and how they're demanding for women to be protected and to be safe instead of being mistreated in these ways. And these are most of these are like they're school children, boys, girls, and they're all advocating and reaching out and protesting regarding the violence against women in Sudan and South Sudan. And so one mentioned about an orphanage in Sudan where it was affected by the war, and even before the war, they have been dealing with a lot of those children that were born out of wedlock or from people who are unmarried, and so they're forced by law to give up their babies for in the orphanage. And so there are, in cases of sexual violence towards women in Sudan, where many of these children were found and were given up because of these violence that were happening towards women. And resources are like for abortion or any ways to help women in these cases are not available and are very limited. And so it leads to this result of many children in need of better health care, and many people in the community, men and women and children, help to volunteer and to help take care of these children, especially doctors who volunteer their time to help these children throughout this time, and especially during the war, to eventually rescue them to safety and to better health care for them. And so women are, the women who are going through these are dealing with specific laws that are hurting them, that they are the ones who are being punished instead of the ones who have been doing the wrongdoing throughout the time there. So in Sudan, they would call it zina, which is like having a child out of wedlock, which is what leads to this result of this orphanage that occurred. And currently the children are currently being rescued throughout during this war. And so one of the recent feminist movements in 2021, most recent, where there's like a women's march, and they call it hashtag It's Not Okay movement. It's a way to bring awareness of the harassment and violence towards women in the community there, and in different Pacific states that are happening. And many martyrs were Sudanese women and men who were peacefully protesting for justice and human rights, gender equality, and freedom of expression. So there are also Sudanese celebrities that were also killed in the war, where some of these celebrities were female musicians, artists, and who were singing and advocating for basically women's rights and just being themselves. And throughout that time, where it became, a total shock, where these people who we looked up to and hear the songs, they're now being gone because of this war that's happening. And also Chinese girls and women, they're brutally hurt based on how they are dressed and the way they're dressed, and which includes the mention of the strict laws that they have, where they have to dress a certain way, and in some cases where they would be hurt. And this is an example of one of the girls in the picture here that you see, that she was recently killed by one of the forces there. And so she's been advocating for women's rights, and many women like her in Sudan who have been advocating for their rights, and also young boys as well who were also with them as well, that has got her as well. So during this war, and even before then, the conflicts, there's ways that people in power tend to control access to information and communication, by shutting down the internet. And so when these internet shutdowns, they usually happen during the conflict or like right after it, because they trying to lower the chance of communication and access to information on the internet of what's really going on in the other areas or their current area, and also to not be able to reach abroad as well. And so like for me personally, like you know, it will be days and weeks to even reach somebody because in Sudan, because of these internet shutdown, but also there's no way of service to call or text or message as well. So as you see here in the map here, in the graph, it shows how that during the war, when it happened, like right after it happened in April 15 until, as you see here in April 23 and 24, sort of it clearly shows the outage of the internet during that time. And so it usually happens frequently during a certain time period where the civilians lack access to information to be able to know what's going on, or to be able to reach out to others to let others know what's really happening during that time. So some information about libraries in Sudan, where Sudan, there's only academic libraries known in Sudan, so more focused with in colleges there, but there's no public libraries currently, and so so it's not easy to connect due to schools that are shut down because of the Sudan's Ministry of Higher Education and scientific research is currently burned down, so it'll be harder to connect with them since through the academic libraries from there currently. And so there are Sudanese librarians, library workers throughout America and abroad, and even within Sudan that are hoping to, you know, get back to work, or they end up going to Egypt or other areas, surrounding areas. And I'd like to share a project that I've been working on with a few others with my team called the Sudan Art and Design Library. And the website here where it's information like of starting art and design library, especially since when it comes to art and designing, it's not really seen as, is not much like supported for like people of power. And so to have the space of books about arts and designs and different aspects of different creative works will bring more people aware about what's out there, what kind of art is out there, to be able to express themselves. And so this is like a project, ongoing project happening. And so to start from there and to express, help others to express themselves through art. The aid workers during the war in Ukraine and Sudan, this is I have an example of Nazig Saleh. She's a Sudanese aid worker, and she lives in Poland, and she's been helping Ukrainian refugees for a while. And so she witnessed the differences of the aid for Sudan, of her own country, and also of Ukraine, and how it's different responses, but we're both dealing with, you know, the same things of what's happening. And so for her to be able to help both, you know, Sudan and helping out Ukraine and, you know, refugees alike. And so she noticed how there is, as you mentioned here, that there's a stark contrast between the response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the ongoing war in Sudan. So the world's selective attention, inadequate response to the plight of Sudanese refugees reflect the lack of political will and a failure to prioritize human lives over geopolitical interests. And so it kind of expresses and shows how the people, Sudanese and others who are in Sudan seeking aid are having a harder time, especially during the military who are shutting down certain areas for people to not be able to leave or to have certain aids to be collected. And so it's been, especially with the internet shutdowns and all that, where it kind of lacked with how to get these materials out there for these people, and not having the connection, the communication, the access to these certain things, where it lacked the ways to be able to do that. And so for her to help out both countries, where she knows certain differences, but at the same time, everyone's dealing with the same things and require the same aid, and it should be reflected in the same way through there. And so the unique features of struggles of women in these countries today, like as you see here, the protests around the world for Ukraine, and where women are advocating about what's going on in Ukraine, and they're still fighting for the rights of gender equality, where they used to have that, and Russia came to take that away. And so that's when women spoke up about their rights to have the women rights. And so as you see here, women representing a rape victim leads to protesters in Berlin. So she is throughout the ongoing wars in Ukraine, and also at the time, and currently in Syria. So it's a way to the way people are dressed and how they are, holding up signs of different sayings to represent their country or other people's country, trying to advocate for them, and to express the need for women's rights in Ukraine and other countries. And also for another unique features of the struggles of women in countries today. So when it comes to as a person of color, or basically replacing white feminism with more of an inclusive feminism. So just a general term of how it should be more inclusive of not only women, but also women of color, women of different religions, and different sexualities and genders and so on. So as you see here in Sadia Khan mentioned in an article, white feminists are cheering on protesters for taking off their hijabs as a cultural triumph for the West, given that hijab is perceived as an antithetical to Western idea of feminism, rather than recognizing the Iranian feminist movement as a grassroots revolutionary development led by Iranian women burning down the symbols of oppression throughout the Senate. So what's going on with the Iranian feminist movement, where the Western idea of feminism is more of like viewing that a woman taking off her hijab is that's what they see more of that, where seeing the action just taking off the hijab, but at the same time, like the women who are Iranian, or a person of color, or someone who's a Muslim, that they see as there are Muslims out there that see it as a symbol of both liberation and also a way for them to express their religious identity, and for some people also their cultural identity as well. So seeing different perspectives instead of just one point of view brings people to learn what other people see when these things are happening, or these cases or scenarios are happening throughout the world. So these are some ways that the U.S. librarians and feminists in these countries can help each other each other's struggles. So of course, as a library worker, you don't have to be, Sudanese or Ukrainian, Iranian, or whichever librarian to advocate and to learn. And so, like for me, as someone who's like the only Sudanese person with my team, where it's I will teach them about Sudan or what's going on about Sudan and see from there. And of course, for them also to look into it themselves and research about it, look into what is going on there or how can we help or what can we look into from there. And also, like myself and my team, like adding to the collection, what more can we add to the collection regarding in Ukraine, whether it's Ukrainian books regarding that, and also Iran as well. So it's always important to actively look into adding to what is meant that's supposed to be in the collection as to a way to diversify for the library collection. And also look into ways of providing access to resources for community members. Is very important. Like having access to information is a very big deal for anyone, and to have specific kinds that are needed is very important to look into from there. And also to be able to connect with other countries and to learn from what other libraries are doing and see from there. It's great to have like someone who's a professional translator or someone who already knows the language to be able to increase the connection, whether Chinese library workers internationally or other library workers in general. And also recommend to connect with your local Chinese American community or any other community, visiting local community center if they exist in the area. And also like social media, like Facebook groups and so on. Like there are ways to find those communities and connect with them and communicate with them, see what your library needs that they could help with that to benefit them and others as well. And developing programmings regarding learning about Sudan or any country and learning from like the history, films, culture, arts, and so on. And also when it comes to those to promote library services and communication channels, so these are more to have events organized for like people of color or anyone who's willing to learn about what's going on or about the culture, history, and so on. And so these are some resources to look into where it's called eyesonsudan.net, and that has all the information that's needed regarding what's going on in Sudan and how to help. And also the Sudanese Literature Archive and Poetics Archive, you check that out as well to see any readings that you would like to read from there of different poets in Sudan and abroad as well. And also some Instagram that you could check out as well to see any updates regarding the situation in Sudan and how to help out and get connection through there. Yeah, thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time, and feel free to contact me and ask me any questions on here or through my email, and check out my website and on Instagram as well. Yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Israa. And now we'll go ahead and turn it over to Frieda.
Thank you, Tetiana, Israa, Derek, and the Social Responsibilities Roundtable of the American Library Association for this opportunity. I don't have a PowerPoint, but I'm going to read out my presentation. In September of 2022, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In September of 2022, a woman-led uprising emerged in Iran after the police arrest and murder of a young Kurdish woman, Mahsa Jina Amini. Amini was arrested by the morality police on charges of wearing her hijab, quote unquote, improperly. She was tortured and beaten unconscious and died a few days later in hospital in Tehran. While Amini was not the first woman to be murdered by the state police, her murder was the one that set off protests that became nationwide. Tens of thousands of young women and men came out in various cities to oppose the compulsory hijab and to demand an end to the Islamic Republic. Many women burned their headscarves and chanted, quote, "Our hijab will be the noose around your neck," unquote. They also chanted neither clergy nor monarchy to indicate that they were not interested in going back to the authoritarian monarchical system that ruled Iran before the Islamic Republic in 1979. What came to be known as the Woman Life Freedom Movement was not a full-fledged feminist revolution, but had some distinct feminist features. Among those were the effort by university students to desegregate university cafeterias and classrooms, which are subject to gender segregation. The movement also included the wide participation of working class women, including Kurdish women from the north, Arab women from the south, and Baluch women from the southeastern part of Iran, which is the most economically deprived and most misogynistic province of the country. Over the course of 7 months, over 20,000 protesters were arrested by the Iranian police and army. Over 500 were killed during the protests. 4 youth were hanged, particularly for their participation in the protests. Many protesters, especially women, were shot in the eyes and the genitals by sharpshooters. Many were raped by the police in or out of prison. Some whose rape and torture led to death were announced as having committed suicide. Thousands of schoolgirls were poisoned. Over the past few months, feminist and labor groups inside Iran have issued various statements of demands to articulate their perspectives for a future democratic Iran. These statements have called for free and equal quality education for women and men at all levels, without any gender segregation. Women's equal participation in the social, political, and economic sphere, reproductive and abortion rights, divorce and custody rights, banning female genital mutilation, child marriage, and polygamy, criminalizing gender violence and sexual harassment, categorizing domestic work as onerous labor requiring better compensation, and legal and health services for incarcerated women. Some feminists have argued that demands cannot be left at the minimum civil society level, but must include human rights, including oppressed national, religious, and sexual minorities, as well as migrants, mostly Afghans. And I need to emphasize that Afghan women are particularly discriminated against and oppressed in Iran. They advocate social justice and positive discrimination, which in the US we call affirmative action. Some have also opposed any call for the legalization of sex work, but advocate decriminalizing sex workers. These feminists oppose exploitation, and specifically exploitation of working women, while also advocating the socialization of domestic labor. The result of the above feminist efforts and the collaboration of feminist and labor unions inside Iran has been a remarkable statement of demands entitled the statement of minimum demands of independent Iranian unions and civil society organizations, dated February 14, 2023. It coincided with the 44th anniversary of the 1979 Iranian Revolution against the monarchy. This statement declared, quote, "The woman life freedom movement is a foundational movement to protest the current state of the country. It is a movement against misogyny, gender discrimination, endless economic insecurity, enslavement of the labor force, poverty, misery, class oppression, and oppression against national and religious minorities. This movement is aimed at permanently ending the formation of any power from above and marks the beginning of a modern and human social revolution for the emancipation of the people from all forms of oppression, discrimination, exploitation, tyranny, and dictatorship." The minimum demands articulated in this declaration include an end to the death penalty and the immediate release of all political prisoners. They also include immediate legal equality of women and men in all political, economic, social, cultural, and familial arenas, the unconditional abolition of all discriminatory laws and customs against sexual and gender identity and orientation, and the recognition of the rainbow LGBTQ+ community, the decriminalization of all gender identities and orientations, and unconditional adherence to all the rights of women to control their own body and their own future without any patriarchal control. Subsequently, a group of Iranian women's rights activists inside Iran issued a statement for International Women's Day in which they emphasized that gender discrimination is rooted in the continuation of capitalist patriarchy. They affirmed many of the demands raised by the statement of minimum demands cited above. They also stated that the current movement has gone beyond demanding anything from the government, which is bound to fail. They challenged all institutions of power, whether the Islamic Republic or monarchy, and pursue radical and structural changes, including the following: the right to choose one's attire, living wages, complete reproductive and abortion rights, free education, free healthcare, and care for the elderly and people with disabilities. The actions of Iranian women and the statements I have cited show that there is much that people around the world can learn from the current women's struggles in Iran. While Iranian women have not yet succeeded in creating a feminist revolution, they have posed some critical questions and challenges for global feminism. The slogan, "Woman, Life, Freedom," which has become the motto of the current uprising, is affirmative. It invites feminists to offer an emancipatory vision of the future. The young women protesting, getting shot, blinded, arrested, raped, and sometimes killed are mostly working class and marginalized women of color. Some of them do not fit the gender binary. They have suffered from over 40 years of a militarized, capitalist, and religious fundamentalist state. They refuse to allow the concept of life to be taken over by the extreme right in its effort to push women back into having more and more babies. They're also not satisfied with liberal feminism's language of choice, careerism, and self-interest. Rather, what many Iranian women demand is a human existence based on self-determination, collective solidarity, emancipated labor, emancipated education, and an end to state and gender violence, which they see as intertwined. The issue of education, critical thinking, and opposition to book bans is an important part of the struggle of Iranian youth. Both under the monarchy and that preceded the Islamic Republic and under the current regime, Many books have been banned, and those books that have received permission for publication are often censored. Books are banned or censored if they include any language that directly challenges religious fundamentalism, authoritarianism, and discrimination against women and oppressed national and religious minorities, such as Kurds and or Baha'is under the current regime. The Iranian government's systematic erasure of historical facts and its revisionist history cannot be challenged in books and the media. I can't say there haven't been efforts. There have been many efforts, but it's always the struggle with the so-called Ministry of Enlightenment, which is really the Ministry of Censorship. It's a struggle to get anything published. The issue of solidarity with prisoners and opposition to the death penalty and solitary confinement is also an important part of the current struggles in Iran. There are currently officially over 200,000, actually, I'm sorry, let me correct that, over 189,000 people in Iran's prisons. That's the official number. The fate of many of the 20,000 arrested during the Women Life Freedom movement is not known. Many young and older feminist activists are currently in prison. Iran's feminist leaders, Nasrin Sotoudeh and Narges Mohammadi, are in the forefront of the struggle against mass incarceration and the death penalty and solitary confinement. Both Sotoudeh and Mohammadi have been in and out of prison for years. Currently, Mohammadi is in prison and Sotoudeh is out on furlough. You can view a moving documentary about Sotoudeh, which was made by Los Angeles producers Jeff Kaufman and Marsha Ross. It is entitled Nasrin. Currently, the increasing arrests of protesters and the repression, including slowing down of the internet, has made it very difficult to have large protests. However, many women still challenge the compulsory hijab rules by going out without their headscarves. Feminist activists are still making statements even from inside prisons. I would like to argue that the fate of the Women Life Freedom movement is in many ways tied to solidarity with struggles in Ukraine, Sudan, China, and the US. The Iranian government is backed economically and militarily by Russian and Chinese imperialism. It is producing missiles and drones for Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. If the Ukrainian struggle for self-determination succeeds in defeating Russia's imperialist invasion and weakening the Russian regime, that would also greatly weaken the Iranian regime, which counts on Russia as one of its main sources of military and nuclear support. The Iranian government has been a strong supporter of the Sudanese military and its religious fundamentalist rule. The fact that women actively participated in the 2019 Sudanese uprising against militarism and religious fundamentalism was a challenge to the Iranian government and an inspiration for Iranian women. Hence, the destruction of the gains of the 2019 uprising by the authoritarian, militarist, racist, and religious fundamentalist military groups in Sudan has also been a defeat for Iranian women. When it comes to the US, Iranians dread the return to power of the Trump administration with its, I should say, dread the possible return to power of the Trump administration with its misogynist, racist, and militarist agenda. Most Iranian women identify with the struggles for reproductive rights and against gender and state violence in the US. Many saluted the Black Lives Matter movement and identify with Black feminist abolitionists, thinkers, and activists. Iranians do want US sanctions lifted, but only if targeted sanctions on the leaders of the Iranian regime and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are kept intact and enforced. They do not want their government to use the money from lifting the sanctions to invest in more nuclear technology and more missile and drone production and further imperialist interventions in the region. They want an end to Iranian militarism and nuclear brinksmanship. Librarians who are viewing this panel, or anyone viewing this panel who wants to help, can do so first and foremost by actively confronting disinformation and book bans in the US. Here are some suggestions. You can organize regular current events discussion groups in your public libraries and talk about various topics in the news from an informed and fact-based perspective in order to create global awareness among the public. You can organize a book talk centered on Iranian feminist Azar Nafisi's new book, Read Dangerously, The Subversive Power of Literature in Troubled Times. Nafisi is the author of the acclaimed Reading Lolita in Tehran. You can show the documentary Nasrin about the Iranian feminist human rights attorney Nasrin Sotoudeh and have a discussion about it. You can discuss how feminists are offering challenges to the current rise in misogyny and assaults on LGBTQ. In my recently published book, Socialist Feminism, A New Approach, I have tried to offer a global view of gender struggles and the struggles against authoritarianism, as well as a critical evaluation of various theories of gender oppression and feminist and humanist alternatives to capitalism and domination. You are also welcome to go to my blog, Iranian Progressives in Translation, which is now in its 14th year and has plenty of articles about ongoing struggles in Iran. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Frieda. And I think with that, we will open it up for questions. So if anybody would like to ask any of our panelists any questions, please put them in the Q&A portion of your on your screen there, and I'll be happy to go ahead and relay those questions onward. I always say give a pregnant pause. I think everyone, I'd also like to thank everyone who was on the panel today for your presentations. Each one of them was very powerful and very a lot of information that's packed within those. And in this day and age, I mean, there's a lot of misinformation that's going on right now and disinformation. So having the three of you speaking to the issues that are taking place in all three of those countries is very meaningful and very welcomed, I think, especially by librarians here that are attending this session. I do have one question in the chat, or not in the chat, in the Q&A and question and answer section. So I'll go ahead. This is for Israa. Is there a national library or archives of Sudan, and how does the government influence? And I think you may have mentioned it a little bit earlier, but if you'd like to expound on that, please.
Yes, so that's a very good question. So currently there isn't a national library or like a archive specifically in Sudan. The thing historically, like a long time ago, it got like burned down and stolen, and you know, like certain documents back then, and so those were lost. And there were some that were started, but then you know, situations that happened where it ended up not, you know, ending up happening. So this is why it's very important where I started. The reason why I started the archives for the Sudanese Literature Archives is because I didn't see it existing. And so I thought to start it and to go from there and to collect literature works of Sudanese authors in Sudan and around in other countries as well. Since I've noticed that we don't have that, and compared to other countries and areas. So to answer your question, there isn't one for Sudan, but I've kind of like started in a way where to hopefully eventually, have it more broader and more accessible throughout the globe as well. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure who this one's for, but it could either be it's for either Dr. Granchak or Israa, I believe, well, or even, yeah, any of our panelists. The atrocities that you're all enduring is just heartbreaking, it says, and that is heartfelt, I think, by many of us. How can we further support you and women in your countries? And I believe you're actually muted at the moment. Let's see. There you go.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank all American colleagues, because American Library Association was the only library association who help Ukrainian colleagues, I'm sorry, by money. So the American Library Association created a fund for help Ukrainian libraries, and now we have already first libraries who receive this money for renovation, for rebuilding, to help some librarians who need this help actually. So you help a lot. You have already helped, but if you'd like to help more, I think that the best way is to connect with our Ukrainian Library Association, and it can be help for individual libraries, for example, in some regions. It can be help for some librarians who are most vulnerable in these situations. But all information is in the Ukrainian Library Association, so you can just contact, and you will have all information about this.
And this is
May I say something about that?
yes, Frieda, please.
Thank you. Unless Israa wants to say something first. Israa, would you like to go?
No, I can say after you. Yes.
Thank you. So all I want to say was that thank you, and my heart goes out to all of you in Texas. It's the heart of the retrogression in the US right now, Texas and Florida. So what I would say is one way in which we can work together is if we come together around the idea of defining the meaning of life and living, because the extreme right is using this expression pro-life to be completely against life and against women's right to have a future. They're taking us back 200 years. So let's redefine life. And in that process of redefining life, we can talk about questions like self-determination, what gender emancipation truly means. We can reach out to feminists internationally. If you want to maybe have Zoom meetings, bring them in. But let's make it a discussion around a very affirmative concept that directly hits the extreme right at the heart of their argument and challenges them at that level. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also like to add, like it's very important, obviously to have the access to resources, not just over here, but also look into what other countries, what kind of information out there to learn from. Like, for example, I have the eyesonsudan.net where we have information regarding Sudan, more details of the data and what's going on and how to help and what letters to write and how to, like, we have templates available if you are able to do that. And there's so many other ways where like the Ukrainian Library Association, like they have resources there and like look into what to go from there. And it's very important to especially because like for example, like I'm here in America and family in Sudan where they don't even have access to the internet or a way to even contact them, but I have the access, I have that. So I use that. And so I have the privilege to be able to use the internet and to write letters and to contact people and stuff like that. So so anyone who has these privileges that others don't, to please use that and to advocate and to speak up for these people. And when it comes to women's rights, and like you mentioned in Texas and what's going on there, and we have to stand by them, and we have to be able to use our resources and the privilege of having certain things that others don't, and to be able to use that, like to be their voices and to advocate for them.
Okay, thank you. It looks like you've already partially answered that, or mostly answered that question. That the next question here is: there was someone who's from Texas, where women's rights and those of others and those of other marginalized groups are continually being eroded. How do you recommend we work together to support women's rights worldwide? Thank you. And I think, like I said, I believe we kind of covered some of that. So, but if there's anything further you'd like, any of you'd like to include, please.
I can add some comments. I think that the Ukrainian Library Association approach how to solve these issues is pretty effective. So I think we need to combine different kinds of activities, and we need to motivate our libraries be proactive, not just reactive, but proactive in these issues. And only this combination of information work, different courses, trainings, speaking clubs, and so on, can help to share this gender equality culture among society, and then society will support all these ideas. So I think this complex approach will be effective.
Dr. Granchak.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question of my own, and this one's for Frieda, if I may. I would like to know if at all the woman, life, freedom movement in the United States has contributed to the efforts of women in Iran. Are there direct communications and collaborations and/or resource support? Also, you cite Russia and China's support of state repression in Iran. What is the United States' role and position in this constellation?
Okay. Concerning the support, if I heard the question correctly, concerning solidarity with women in Iran, well, that was the first part. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. On the part of the Iranian exiles in the US, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So that has included sending funds to individual friends and activists. It has included getting international solidarity statements signed by various activists and academics around the world, writing reports and articles, translating statements from Iran, including the one that I cited, or several of the ones that I cited in my presentation, organizing panels, drawing connections between US and Iran struggles, especially abortion rights and prison abolitionism. And then concerning the second part, which was about, please reread the second part of the question.
Sure. Let's see, there's, you cite Russia and China's support of state repression in Iran. What is the United States' role and position in this constellation?
Okay, well, the most important issue concerning the US right now, I mean, I'm not even going to go into the history of US intervention in Iran and, you know, the 1953 coup, overthrow of the Mossadegh nationalist government, all that. I'm not even going to go into that, and its support of the monarchy before the Islamic Republic. I'm only talking about the current moment, and that is that the US sanctions have really been very difficult for Iranians. There's no doubt about that. And so, because even though it doesn't include food and medicine, because it includes banking transactions, that in turn does affect access to food and medicine. So most progressives, both inside and outside Iran, are in favor of targeted sanctions focused on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and individual leaders of the Islamic Republic, many of whom are leaders of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. So that's what I would say we can do to confront the effect that US sanctions are having on Iran today.
Thank you. I have another question that just came up. How could we make connected and develop the anti-war movement for a life with human dignity for everyone? And I think that could be open for anyone at this point. And if you'd like, I can reread the question.
I just spoke, so I'd rather hear Tetiana and Israa on that first.
I think it's also about informational work. So we can, if we librarian, we can share true information, objective information about among our patrons, and to form actually a feeling of responsibility and understanding. And I think that if we speak about the USA, actually, it's extremely important to form kind of civil opinion, public opinion, because people can I can't say press, but influence politics, and people can influence individual politicians, and people can make a request. So I think that people awareness about what is going on in Ukraine and in world in general, it's extremely important to important factor that influence politics and political decision in your country. And for Ukrainians, your country is one of the most powerful defenders, protectors of actually legal daily agenda. So I think that the informational work is one of the most important in the era of informational manipulation and informational confrontation. So I think in such way you can join all this struggle for our future.
Israa, did you want to add to that, or?
Yes, I would like to add, so when in the library, especially my experience in the public library, is very important through educating and through like, for example, like programmings or having certain events where to educate people in the public regarding the issues that are going on. And so it's very important to have that space for patrons and people in the community to join together and to learn from each other through there. And like you mentioned, like there are, certain, opinions or perspectives of certain things. And but hopefully, it's a space so to hear from others and to learn from there. And there's different ways. It could be through film or through doing an artwork based on from some like activist artists. There's different ways where to educate the public regarding this. And the anti-war movement. So it's through educating, and trying to create events and programming through there and connecting through resources.
And all I would like to add is to say that, yes, I think that we can also learn a lot from the reproductive justice movement in the US, started by Black feminists, and many of whom are abolitionists. And I've discussed this in my book as well. And yes, the Woman, Life, Freedom slogan can play a connecting role between different countries, beginning with what we did on this panel, taking these 3 countries and talking about what we have to say to each other and why these struggles are so critically important for the rest of the world. So thank you.
So I'm going to throw in that very last question there, if that's okay. Because it was a follow-up on that first one. Could the Women, Life, Freedom slogan play a connecting role between the different countries? And this will be our last question for the session, because we have another one starting in about 15 minutes.
I think just in general, women in each of these countries and others, we're all dealing with the same issues of feminist struggles, and the only differences is different location, you know. So, but it's the same connection and same similar experiences, and so to connect with each other and to provide information and resources and a community, and to be able to help those in need, and to be able to join together and to be able to escape whichever the situation is regarding what's happening in their country and in their lives specifically. And so that's I hope I answered the question for that. Yeah, so it's basically we're all dealing with the same struggles throughout all the countries, and it's all about joining together and helping each other out.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'd like to say on behalf of everyone, I think we're gonna go ahead and close this session. On behalf of everyone, in today's session, the Office for Diversity, Literacy, Outreach Services, and the American Library Association Social Responsibility Roundtable, I would like to thank all our panelists. Again, please visit the Social Responsibility Roundtable for this and other program recordings from past events. The next session, Disability is Not a Bad Word, begins 1:45 p.m. Central Time, 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time here. So I thank you all and hope to see you soon at our next session. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
much. Be safe.